The 2024 World Chess Championship continues. We just saw the conclusion of game number 10. Let me break down exactly what happened in this one. Now, getting into things, of course, we're all excited to see what the openings are going to be. Ding has the white pieces, and personally, I was excited by this one, although it may have put just about every other viewer and fan to sleep. The move d4 was played, knight f6, knight f3, and you'll notice that for the most part, the top guys, they will not play the London against the move knight f6. It does happen. I recommend the move order bishop f4, so bishop f4 on move 2. At the top level, basically you'll see that the guys are strong enough that they're not looking to play the London every game. They're looking to play the London against the setup that the London is strong against. So they might play a move like knight f3, and if black plays d5, they're like, oh, I'd like to play the London against this, and they play bishop f4. I have a course on the London. I certainly recommend bishop f4. It's more as a weapon for people that want a reliable system they can play all the time. And you can play bishop f4 here, but if the top guys are capable of playing so many other openings, they're just not going to be interested in playing the London against one of the best responses to the London and most annoying. So instead, we see knight f3, and then after the move d5, we see that Ding is far more satisfied and ready to play bishop f4. It just works. It makes more sense now that the diagonal's open. You don't have to deal with any King's Indian lines or anything like that with pawn on d6. e6 was played, e3, c5, and at this point, bishop e2. I don't know. We've got to talk about this move. Obviously, it's just a different, very different intention. Just speaking plainly here, I would play c3 without much thought. This is exactly how you actually play the London. To play it as intended, the knight wants to go to d2, and if black ever makes a threat on the b2 pawn, we would just guard it with queen b3, because these positions are always favorable for white, and anytime the capture happens, we always take back with the e pawn. Whether or not these trades have happened doesn't matter. This is just pretty much always true. Always recapture with the e pawn on d4. And if black plays c4, yes, we could take, but we could also go back because this bishop is locked in from the e pawn. And yeah, again, I think white just has a small advantage here. So knight d2, bishop out to most likely d3, h3, castles, queen b3 if needed. But once the knight comes to d2, we could even play rook b1. So those are the standard London ideas. This is something that I talk about a lot in my games, and bishop e2, that's just not a move. And we can tell though by the way that Ding is playing, he's not playing London in a completely orthodox way. This pawn is clearly ready to play c4. I can tell because he's not playing the move c3, so I think it's obvious. And yeah, c3, just for all the true London enjoyers out there, there may still be a few of you. c3, knight d2 instead of the bishop would be preferred, because when you're developing in the London, developing your queenside pieces is actually quite important in order to always be ready to deal with queen b6. So nevertheless, we see bishop e2. Obviously, it's not a terrible move, but the move bishop e2 does not fit in well with the London game plan. Bishop d6 and d takes e5. So this is a must do, because at this point, I think that if white went back with bishop g3, let's just say even this capture, black could play queen to c7, knight d7, or knight c6, and then just e5. There doesn't seem to be anything in this game that will prevent that plan from happening. Not to mention queen b6 hitting the b2 pawn is now a big problem. Like, how do you defend that b2 pawn nicely? Here, the move queen b6, at least we still have a moment to answer with knight c3. And then knight will make it to b5, threatening knight c7. So very, very dangerous pawn to capture here. But after bishop d6, bishop g3, I think it's too much. and all of a sudden this move is most likely going to be a big problem. So that's why we see d takes c5. Now the bishop's going to be wasting time capturing back, and if Gukesh would take on f4, this is actually what Ding wants. Take this way, and these positions, even though black can regain the pawn, it's not about having an extra pawn. You play this position, the knight goes d2, b3, d4, g3 to solidify the pawns, and I've played these positions quite a bit. I definitely think it's comfortable. Let's not blunder our pawn in that final position as I say how comfortable it is, but I think you get the point. The knights have great squares. Maybe the position is around equal, but yeah, I do think that white's position is extremely easy to play. So Ding would be more than happy with that. Instead, of course, we see bishop takes pawn back and pawn to c4. So this is, I could tell this move was coming just because c3 was so obvious and it was not being played. Very typical of the London. But now we're venturing kind of away from the London and more into just more typical Queen's Gambit positions. Although this bishop on f4, I have to say, is uniquely placed. Both sides castle, knight c6, knight c3. I mean, this is almost textbook development. Everybody's got their pieces out where they should be. You could always argue that white has a marginal advantage because if you look at the quality of the bishops, you know, the bishop on c8 kind of lags behind. But that's about it. That's really about all I'm basing that opinion off of. Black decides to take on c4 and go knight h5. Now, bishop g3, knight takes g3. I think that a position like this is just easily in black's favor for no reason at all, right? We don't need to just hand over that dark square bishop. So something like this would be a problem to me. Just completely unnecessary to allow. And these bishops, especially the dark square bishop for black that his opponent does not have, is going to be a very strong piece. So completely unnecessary, and Ding realizes there's no way to concede any type of semblance of an advantage there. Bishop g5, and after knight e4, knight back to f6, it's time for mass trades. And even though there is a double pawn that arrives on f6, I don't think this is bad at all. Okay, definitely, do I prefer white's pawn structure? The answer is yes. The answer should always be yes. But these pawns here, not a big problem. This bishop, I know it doesn't look like it's doing that much, but you're going to find it, pretty obvious pretty soon that there's absolutely nothing doing in this position. And Ding has just vacuumed every piece off the board with this move knight e4. It does feel like I prefer white's position very slightly because of the bishop on c4 versus the bishop on c8, but there's really not much in it. Tons of trades. White has to contest the file, and at this point the move bishop d7 is played, and very, very standard procedure would be maybe bring the king to e7, bishop e8, and just trade everything on the open file. That's it. Black should not be worse in this game, and Ding has basically assumed zero risk the entire game. Everybody brings the king to the middle. Note just some good habits from Ding, putting the pawns on the dark squares because there is, light square bishops on the board. So small thing, but does matter. Black finally decides to trade those rooks off the board. The pawn structure is not quite symmetrical. We have this small imbalance, but it is more or less the exact same. And believe me, when Ding is playing this game, he's not thinking for a second that he's got a chance to win. And we see more pawns on dark squares. There's nothing black can do about these ones, but we'll most likely see h6, pawns on dark squares here, f6, and then, yeah, that's exactly actually what we do see. And the game just ends with a repetition there. So, I'm not here to sell you that this game was super exciting, because it wasn't. It was pretty boring, uneventful, but we have seen that from Ding. We've seen that kind of become his strategy. He's okay playing a game that results in this. To be honest, he's had games which he's even had a bit more of an advantage, and it still resulted in a draw. So clearly, Ding is more than happy to play his defense, show his resilience, maybe take an opportunity as he did way at the start of the match if Gukesh overpresses. But for the most part, it seems as though he is content with the match heading to tiebreaks. And I wonder if Gukesh feels differently, in a rapid blitz tiebreak. I'm not sure how he views his chances there, but it does seem like Ding is relatively okay with that, just from the chess we're seeing. I mean, this is round 10. You got the white pieces, and this is what we get. So, yeah, as the event draws to a close, slowly, it does start to feel like that for me. But of course, this strategy can easily backfire because you're basically not trying with the white pieces, and you're letting your opponent try when they have the white pieces. But over the course of the entire match, that has proven to be successful. So we can't really say that much against it. And who knows, with so many chess games, like, you're just not going to have an exciting one every time. You're not going to be motivated or willing to play, a long, intense game. So for whatever reason, this is the game that we got today. But no, I can't promise to make it exciting. Guys, this was a boring one. There was nothing really in it, but it does bring us, one step closer to the end of the match, which means that, the gravity of each game certainly increases. All of a sudden, that one win is even more meaningful because there'll be less games to come back. And Gukesh will have a shot with the white pieces. He can see now that his opponent is very willing to go into this strategy. Is Gukesh going to match it and just say, okay, I'll make these draws as well? A little bit of a push, but if I don't get anything, happy to make a draw, and we go to tie breaks? Or is he going to see that maybe as a problem? If he doesn't view his chances as very high in the tie breaks, guess what? He's all of a sudden going to feel the pressure, like, okay, time's ticking. I only have a couple more games, especially with the white pieces, to make an impact. So I will be back once again with the round 11 recap tomorrow. I will see you guys for that one.